Assalamu alaikum, يسعد مساءكم جميعا, and welcome to our today's workshop, which is going to be about how to write descriptive and narrative essays. Today's workshop is going to be the last one in the third series about how to write essays. And the workshop is going to be presented by Mr. Mohammed Haseen. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed. And the floor is yours. You may start now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Basin. As you said, this is going to be one of the last presentation before this module winds up. But I'd like to make sure, am I being heard? Loud and clear. Dr. Basin?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I can hear you clearly, yeah.
Okay. I hope my audience is super pumped today because there's something in the store for them. Having experienced a number of workshops by our esteemed colleagues, today's workshop is basically about not separate genres of writing, but descriptive writing and narrative writing. When we talk of descriptive writing, it's quite simple. It sounds simple that we are supposed to describe things. Now, description can be as simple as basic facts. But when we need to describe things with its true color, its true picture, and with all its features, we need to use good images. So in fact, descriptive writers use lots of imageries, and those imageries are quite vivid. I mean, it presents a glaring picture of what we see. And in fact, the reader are so convinced of the picture presented that the reader starts believing it. But it's not easy conjuring up such pictures, first of all in the mind and then in words. For that, we need vivid verbs, awesome adjectives. Adjectives, as you're well aware, they're the descriptive words, and they add color, they add texture, the features, and they are really helpful to add minute details. And it's like just as a painter strokes his brush to paint a picture, to gives it a glow. As a writer, words or vocabs or images are our strokes. And we must use descriptive adjectives, and we must utilize whatever comes handy to our descriptive profile. On the screen, you see there's a slight distinction between what we call narrative essay and descriptive essay. Narrate means to tell a story. The storyteller, or the one who tells us part of the story or the whole story, It's centers around plots, themes, and usually the good writers, they begin with the conflict. Conflict is like two sides of the same coin, and the conflict is resolved. Uh, so when we think of narrative essay, they could be pretty long. The kinds of narrative essays, I mean, longer essays can be called novels. And novels can run into hundreds and hundreds of pages, you know. So it could be either short stories, or short stories can be as short as simple anecdotes told by our grandmothers, and sometimes our elderly people, sometimes fables in literature. Biographies can also be pretty long. Some autobiographies and biographies have been printed, have been turned into books. Historical accounts, there are certain characters could be prominent in the history, and we have the historical accounts. So they are like biographies written by others. Even in poems, when we compose poems, we need to focus on the fabric. There is a theme that is consistently treated and carried on. Dramas and plays. So these are some of the examples that fall under the category of narrative writing, narrative essays. And usually we have these components in the narrative essays, like plot, conflict, characterization. There's a setting, the backdrop. There must be a theme. It also includes the point of view of the writer. Probably sometimes a biased, jaundiced view, but every writer has his own way of treating and giving an outlook to what his feelings are, what his beliefs are, what his doctrines are. So whatever the form of the narrative essay is, there must be sequential, and there is a beginning, and there's a progress, and there is an end or conclusion of it. So at the very outset, I would like all of you to form a picture of a clear distinction, although sometimes they overlap, in fact, you know. They're not categorized as separate genres. And you have already been trained in writing essays like discursive, persuasive. The last workshop was, pivoted around cause and effects essay. So when you say cause and effect, yeah, we know that everything is caused by an action, and there will be an effect if there is something caused. But here we have a bigger picture of essay writing, and that falls in these two separate categories. Sometimes they overlap, but what makes them apart is the way we treat. That's why I have put this slide to begin with, to have a clear picture of this distinction. Now, descriptive essay, what is paramount to writing a descriptive essay, or important, is that it's a portrayal, a vivid portrayal, a very clear and crystal portrayal of, could be a person, could be a place, a thing, in such a way the reader can experience the writer experience. I mean, it's like letting you peep into the window of the writer's inner world, writer's own world. So obviously, he's going to use lots of figurative language in order to make it lively and effective and have a lasting impression upon the psyche of the reader. So usually the skill writers, they have to use sensory language. We'll come to discuss in details what is a sensory language, what is a plain language. But whenever we think of things that conceptualize, what are the tools with the writers. The tools could be our sensory perceptions. That might include sight, sound, and taste, smell, touch. And if you look at this descriptive writing, what do you see? What to describe? So we describe something that we feel by touching. If you look at this, we have this eye, and we have the ear. So we keep listening. We keep even smelling, and this aromatherapy. I've heard of aromatherapy. There's a way we treat patients in a way. So we get to sense a lot through our nose, sensory perception. We watch, observe things so much through our eyes, and we can speak a lot. We can acquire a lot just by observation. Then we have the other two, taste. Now, if we have to describe some delicious foods, we have to have a description of the palate. Like, how does it taste? Is it delicious, awful, it's pungent, it's obnoxious, boring, or... And then we have the smell, sight, and hearing. So these 5 sensory perceptions, organs of our bodies, they go a long way in establishing the vivid picture of what we like to describe. So if you're going to, I was thinking of writing an essay, whether it's descriptive or narrative, we need to have an outline. Why do we need an outline? In fact, outline helps us to go by. I mean, it's like a small structure, a framework, a kind of scaffolding, you know. So the first thing, before writing, we start brainstorming ideas, right? And the thing is that when we start thinking of a subject or a topic, whether we like it or not, there are ideas that start flooding our mind. So we cannot open the floodgates of all the ideas, whether sensical or nonsensical. So we need to glean out or categorize or eliminate some of the ideas that may be far-fetched, they may be not really relevant to our topic. So the outline helps us to eliminate unnecessary details, and also at the same time helps us to include sensory details, strong description. So beginning with the brainstorming and having an outline and using a sensory details, that gets us going, strongly about. That's the first step towards. Suppose there's a case in point here, a person to be described. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, or anyone you have met, an acquaintance. So if you describe a person you know very well, your task is easier. Why? Because lots of information already start flooding your mind. And you have already, conjured up a picture, and you have an impression of the guy, because you have met him, you have seen him. You don't have to visualize or imagine the things. So description of anyone, could be best friend, a co-worker, colleague, or your mentor, a teacher, the teacher you like best, the teacher you remember until now when you were in school, when you, sometimes we have to write about our first teacher we met. So we need to go back down the memory lane and try to picturize the person. Sometimes we may not have a real character. It could be a fictional person. A fictional person is someone you haven't met, you haven't seen, you don't know for sure, but you have to visualize or you have to make up. It's like making up a picture of an individual. Sometimes we are asked to write about a character from your favorite TV show or video game, right? So whoever you're talking about, the thing is, we must uh, uh, talk in details about the person you have chosen to be described. Now, while choosing a topic, the essay will be much more readable and will be interesting if you choose a topic which is engaging. For example, a descriptive essay, we have to have a topic, right? Whatever kind of essay, we need to talk about a proposition, a conflict, or any discussion in motion. So when we talk of a descriptive essay, what could be the descriptive essays like? You might choose something that interests you more. Why? It gives you an advantage that you write about something you are passionate about. You really like talking about. There are a whole host of things you could write about. Like, for example, last summer holiday, right? You can talk about your oldest memory. It can be as simple as talk about a family member, describe a family member from your, your own family, or it could be extended family. Describe a book you have read, something that really, you like reading, and you have always had, or you always wanted to read, or a movie that you might have seen recently and it's left an indelible impression upon your mind. Or it could be a description of an invention. So descriptive essays are cut and dried, and there could be simple description of the facts and figures of that thing. For example, invention. We're not going to talk a lot with our sensory perception of invention, because there's nothing that has got to do much with the feelings and our. So it will be a scientific explanation, a description of that thing that has been invented. But if you have been asked to write the struggle behind, the story behind how you accidentally or deliberately came up with the idea of inventing this, you'll have to go back, visualize, and use the sensory perception. It could describe a place that means a lot to you, describe an ideal home or room, describe something from imagination, describe an outfit. It could be as simple as a dress, an item of clothing that you may have been offered or presented, or you may have liked for long, or something really looked presentable and looked fantastic in that clothing. So you could describe that. Or the outfit of someone, models, or it could be a simple description of a jewelry, a piece of jewelry. So what I'm simply showing you that the whole host of descriptive essays, we have a long list of the essay topics. And when it comes to exam scenario, or different competitive exam, be ready to be asked for any one of these. So to start off, to kick off, on a firm footing, you need a thesis statement, and usually that occurs in the first paragraph, right? Thesis statement occurs in the first paragraph. Usually it comes in the middle of the first paragraph. You have been told so many times, I've been observing all those workshops, and umpteen number of times we have been shown how to write the opening paragraph, the introductory paragraph with the thesis statement, how to go about supporting details, and how many paragraphs should an essay run into, and how we go about long essays, about cause and effect, persuasive essays, and all that. I'm not going to into nitty-gritties of those developing this. What I'm trying to deliberate today on is how to come up with a good, presentable, effective, super exciting piece of writing, whether it's narrative or descriptive. Narrative writing takes a lot of a schema, prior information and prior knowledge, because you have to have, jerk yourself, and you need to have, lots of sound knowledge about the topic. So thesis statement is used to say the purpose of the essay should be referred back to varying points worldwide. That means thesis statement is like a pole star. I mean, it's a guiding principle. And whenever you write something, always ask yourself, am I sticking to, am I talking about the topic in motion? And it should be into an introduction so that your readers are clear on what the essay is about. So this gives a window, an idea to the audience about what kind of. So the essay outline, you may start with a rough note of anything. That's the word. Every essay should be written with the assistance of an essay. Should look something like this. So we must start with the introduction. Thesis statement. A thesis statement might include a hook to grab the attention of the reader. It's going to be a personal story. I mean, when your personal story start with a personal happening, people tend to believe you. They think as if the guy has experienced it and it could happen to me as well. So usually when we start with a personal story, not a long one, a short one, and it should sound to be plausible, authentic, real, and convincing to the reader or writer. Anecdotes, yeah, it's a story, a small story. Yeah, it could start with a hook, like a joke, but joke shouldn't be redundant or something out of place or something just to make us laugh. And it should be used to make us think, to trigger some kind of interest in and a little bit about the essay itself. So this section detailed in paragraphs. There are more than one paragraph, sometimes 2, 3, depending upon what kind of essay you're writing. So I'm not going into the details of those kind of things. Now, when it comes to writing a descriptive essay, what's important is to have the clarity, the conciseness, and easy to read. What do you mean by easy to read? This means that the reader must follow with the structure, the pattern, the framework that you have built your essay on. And without having to waste the number of words to be used, sometimes we have a word limit. So words are like coins, and you cannot just squander with those coins in writing anything. You must think before choosing any single adjective or verb or action verbs, or because if you keep spending your words, the coins, the currencies, you will be at a loss, and people will also be at a loss. Or they won't get anything. They won't grasp what you're trying to hint at. Once you want to use colorful description that easily paint a picture, you don't want to overcomplicate the language. The thing is, we have plenty of words. They don't convey the real meaning. They don't convey the subtle difference between the conveying of the message. So poignantly, we must not overcomplicate the language. But at the same time, we shouldn't go for a very simple, down-to-earth, day-to-day language, because you are anyway describing things in a glossy and glowing terms, and therefore make the essay unreadable. So we have to have a mid-path. Don't let it be complicated, cumbersome, or with loads of tough, bombastic, and pompous words, but try to utilize synonyms. Every time you say the other word, other idea, try to avoid repetitions. When you go for repetitions, it makes it monotonous, and people lose interest in reading you. So to make your writing sound more intelligent and creative. So what's the whole point is about using synonyms, antonyms, and kind of figurative language is to make your writing appear to be fresh and creative and impactful, and it should be wonderfully presented. These also add to descriptive flair of this type of writing. If you have a flair for the language, flowery language, it will go a long way in establishing your personal rapport with the reader. Now, how to write an introduction paragraph? You have been told a number of times, introductory paragraph is like, is a first step towards convincing your reader that you're going to write it well. So clear idea, author's opinion, must be enticing to the reader, must be inviting to the reader, must be engaging. And the three key elements of the introductory paragraph could be inclusion of the introduction to the point where I say engaging the reader, the thesis statement, right? So if you have a good thesis statement, and you have been told a number of times how to write a good thesis statement, this incorporates the whole idea of the essay you're going to develop. It's like the heart of an essay, a window through which the reader can get to know you very well. Now, descriptive essays are relatively easier than narrative writing. Why? Because what I feel is that in narrative writing, when it tells a story, and narrative writing comprises of a whole host of write-ups, writing tasks, and writing genres. For example, I already told you that it could be biography, it could be drama, poetry, short stories, and all of these. So obviously, narrative writing tells a story or part of story. It includes plot, conflict. So conflict is like, dichotomy or antithesis, like two conflicting points of view. Then characterization are, sometimes we create characters. Sometimes the author himself has his own persona, his own personality in his writing. And he narrates the story through the mouth, through the picturation of a character. So whenever we think of a villain in a story, or we always think of one villain who has become an epitome or the symbolical of that. Setting is the background. Like where is it set? Is it a village? Is it countryside? Or is it in a drawing room? Is it in a what's the theme of that? What's the point of view being carried out? Overall theme could be related to some kind of philosophy, some kind of messages, some kind of, and of course the sequence is important because we will be lost if we don't know what happened first and what followed and what came at the end and how the conflict will resolve the end. We'll never be able to keep count of the events. So events have to be sequential with the help of transition words. You have been trained how to use transition word, like in the first place, firstly, secondly, after that, and then we have, furthermore, and those kind of transition words. And in order to conclude, since there are so many examples of narrative writing, it could be novels, short stories, biographies. If you're familiar with biography, it's the life history of someone important, historical, or it could be any political or anybody, like Ibn Battuta, Ibn Sina, the first, doctors or the chemists or the philosophers, or it could be any one of those prominent personalities in the past, at present, living, dead. Autobiography of people, they write their own life history. Historical accounts could be of like a traveler, explorer, somebody like Marco Polo, the discoverer, one who visited new parts of the world. And then, of course, in the poems, dramas, plays. So these are some of the basic things that we have to. But when it comes to descriptive writing, essay, it simply talks about person, place, thing. So it's a bit commonplace, ordinary things, in descriptive writing, in contrast to narrative writing. So when we describe the things, it only includes the basic features, could be shape, size, could be the length, could be the, material, could be the. So when we talk of descriptive essay, our sensory language, vivid details, and these kind of things help a lot. Why? Because we want to present the item or the thing to be described as if it comes to life. Suppose you want to describe about the Al-Baik restaurant. Now, what kind of sensory perceptions are you going to use? So when it comes to smell, even from far off, a kilometer, a mile, you can smell of it. You just close your eyes and smell of Al-Baik, and you smell of that garlic paste and whatever they offer you. Taste also unique. So you feel like eating it even before eating. And sound will be what? When you think of the sound, there will be always crowded. There will be people thronging and in a line, and you need to have a token, and you need to wait for 20 minutes, and there will be hustle and bustle, and the entire Al-Baik is presence and world in itself. What if you decide? You will have to struggle to get your meal, around 20 minutes. So see how we are activating our senses, visualizing and trying to create a descriptive scene of an Al-Baik restaurant. Another example I give you, think of a Corniche and think of the people thronging there, children walking, joining, having meals, bikes, the bob on the beaches, fluttering of the Jeddah fountain, you say. So when we think of these sensory perceptions, altogether we have to use all the 5 senses. There are people that can use their 6 senses also, but for ordinary common people, 5 senses would be enough. So for example, the acid smell penetrated means entered my nostrils. Instead of saying nose, you can use nostrils as a breather deeply. Like when you breathe in, breathe out, the humidity of the rain clung, like cling is like, sticking to you, to my skin. As I walk to my crippled car. The car can be crippled, it can be broken, it can be, out of order or something else. But crippled is like people, like who use crutch, lame people. Or so why the word cripple has been used for the car? In order to give, to visualize it sensuously, So it's a handy tool in the hands of the writer to use this sense of perception. Narrative story can be either fictional or real life. So the thing is, in narration, if you're narrating fictional, you have to conceive of or imagine the things in your head. You're creating it on your own. So narrative essay use first and third person mostly. If it is you are describing or conceiving of a picture, you use first person or third person. Narrative essay, write what he wants related to the topic. So let's don't think of argumentative essay or those kind of things. It's very different, from the argumentative or cause and effect essay. See how we visualize the things, and these bubbles are like ideas, What do you say? These bubbles are like ideas, right? Right, guys? So we need to visualize, brainstorm, and activate our schema, the prior knowledge, and only then we can have a good picturation of what we are going to present. So whenever we talk of either descriptive or narrative, we must describe and connect. It's very important is to relate to the theme, relate to the experience, relate to the real happening. I mean, strike a chord, strike a relationship with the writer, the one who's telling the story. And this can happen only when we have strong emotions like anger, loss, desire, or rage. Rage is even stronger than a normal anger, you know? Like road rage. When you're driving, and you are really pissed off and you think that people are honking, you're trying to overstep you or leave you behind, and there's some really crazy, reckless drivers. So they're in a rage. And that also makes you a bit enraged. So this is not a common ordinary emotion. It's a very strong emotion. And in narrative writing, you may be asked to describe or, you know, present or depict a picture of a scene, a plot, and a background where you have to have react very strongly emotionally. So if you can relate your own personal experience with any kind of emotions, that would be more appealing. Okay, so I guess I don't have to tell you anything about introductory paragraph. You already know this: an engaging reader, a thesis statement, introduction, a value of instructions. To begin with, you must describe descriptive essays. They go about an emotion you connect to. You may choose a strong emotion like anger, loss, desire. You could also go for some vivid, adjectives to express a strong emotion. Now, look at this. I want you to read this. My mother is not like other mothers. She is a fierce protector. See the kind of adjectives being used. And a fierce, we usually use this adjective for fighters, for soldiers, for wrestlers, for fierce fighting. But she's a protector and kind of fierce protector. That means very strong and strong-headed, thick-skinned, strong-headed, and a mysterious woman. Mysterious. Now, whenever you use the word mysterious, an adjective, your readers start thinking of, oh, there must be something hidden or secretive about this woman. So this is the way the daughter of the son describes his or her mother. Now, see the adjective, kind of adjective here used. Trisha stirred the large stock pot of stew. Stew is a kind of dish that we, mutton stew, and watching as flashes of bright orange carrot. Now, the carrot has been referred to as if they're not, there's not a vegetable or it's like, bright, glowing, and a stark white potato. Now, potato has been referred to as stark, very deep, white potato, and dance around, see the kind of human touch that has been given to this potato. Have you ever experienced, potato chips or potato dancing before you? When you go to McDonald's and there's crispy potato chips that you eat, do they appear dancing before you when you eat up? Occasionally peeking through the thick brown liquid. See the kind of adjectives: thick, brown, liquid, as it bubbled and steamed. Now this verb, action verbs, also tell us about some actions. It's not simple, what's happening. It's showing bubbling and steaming. So as if human quality has been given to this. So whenever you're writing a narrative or descriptive essay, you're supposed to, outshout. You have to supposed to change the verbs to a more interesting one. So you might like to check your thesaurus, because we are not ready with the words all the time. We have to have a good I mean, own active vocabulary that's readily at your disposal. And be careful of your choice of words. You know, the teacher waved at the coach. I mean, like raising your hands and waving. However, there's a comma missing here. See the problem here? So we need to check about the mechanics also when we have the final draft representation. So, however, the coach was interested in the play and didn't do as suggested. Now, surprised by his response, the teacher took the opportunity to yell out, "Stop! Stop!" Now, yell out, it could be cried, could be shouted, but why yell out? Yell out is at the highest pitch when you yell. I mean, the mother yelled at the mischievous daughter, at the naughty girl. So yell it gives you a powerful impression of shouting. Screaming is like screaming. So how can you replace these verbs with them? You can use screaming. You can use took the opportunity, like grab the opportunity, like caught or took it as. So we keep trying to replace these verbs with a more powerful adjectives, more descriptive adjectives. Okay, I'm coming to the narrative writing and the specifications. A narrative story containing specific elements that they work together to create interest for not only the author, but also the reader. Now, the thing is, it's not important for the writer only to have the specific, but also for the reader. If the readers, they don't sustain their interest in reading, what's the point of writing? I mean, any writing would be useless as long as it doesn't give the kind of impression that the writer wants to create on the reader. So this type of writing makes the reader feel as if he or she were part of the story, as it was being told directly to him or her. So in narrative story, we must be very emotional with all the 5 sensory perceptions at our disposal. And we need to start with a story. The author may write about experience, the event from his or her past, depending upon, I'm not here specifying any kind of writing. I mean, what I'm trying to impress upon you is that it's not just for your level 1, 2, 3, or 4 writing. It's aiming to be a good writer towards the end of your life. In fact, writing comes, by painstakingly and after a lot of rigorous practicing throughout your life. You cannot be a writer overnight. Nobody can, and believe me, nobody can. I've heard that good readers are good writers. Why? Because you keep reading authentic material and gaining knowledge over the years, and that knowledge comes handy when it comes to telling or writing any kind of thematic piece of writing. So an experience from the past, ongoing experience, that's something that happened to somebody else. It could be personal, impersonal. You have to be objective, subjective. It can include elements of fiction. That means not something real. A narrative should exposition, rising, action, climax, following action, resolution. Usually, every write-up of narrative sort, it has elements like exposition. We begin with, we start with the kind of hook, thesis statement, start with exposition. We float the idea, then the actions happen. Lots of action can happen, thousands of actions, when it comes to writing a novel or autobiography, or then there is a climax, and then there will be following action. Resolution is, that means the conflict is resolved. So what is important is all narratives, whatever kind of narratives they are, they must have a compelling conflict. Conflict makes it more interesting, readable, and it leaves a lasting impression on the reader. So when it comes to writing a narrative, narrative takes a moment and completely expands. So it's like zooming in one moment. I mean, you have to specify and further expand on it, highlight. So you need to show it. Don't tell. I mean, you're actually writing it through the words, but it seems as if you are demonstrating it. It's as if it's a picture perfect scene or scenario, and any reader can transport himself, transform himself, or can, in fact, I mean, it's like a transmigration. So the reader will be with you, will experience, will have the same kind of feelings, the empathy, and it will enter your heart. So how it is possible? If you already tell the reader everything, he will not keep gesticulating, he will not keep guessing, or keep, his or her fingers crossed what's lying in the store. So don't be obvious. Don't be conspicuous. Always be like some kind of mystery, mysterious. So how are you going to be mysterious? I mean, it's not easy. I told you, writing narrative is not easy, and you need to have a whole host of writing tools and writing tips and writing. I mean, the handy language. What language comes handy? Look, you need to use comparisons. It can be comparative, superlative. If you're comparing two things, okay, comparatives. If you're comparing as it one of the best, use superlatives. Also use the word choice. Desirable, undesirable, or neutral adjectives. Also add spice to your writing. How do you add spice? Like if you want a very tasty, delicious dish, and you would like to relish the dish and the food, you must add some spices, spices like what? Do we add cardamom and chilies to our writing? Actually, the cardamom and chilies are like these, metaphors. What's a metaphor? If you don't know, guys, today I'll recommend go back to your, Google it and try to know what's a metaphor. It's kind of, saying as if two things have become one. For example, if I say he's a lion, and that means he roars, like he's the Einstein of today, like he's Similes, we use a comparative with the help of like or as. Like he roars like a lion, and he advances like a tiger in the battlefield. Personification, when we give life to an inanimate or non-living thing, is called personification. For example, if I say death is walking towards the dying man with his icy hands, so it seems like death has become a human, and it has his hands, and ice represents death. So it's going to lay his hands on the dying man. So, and imagery, I've already explained you that there are 5 sensory perceptions, images through our nostrils, nose, eyes, skin, hands, feelings, and all that. That makes up. Like he was pacing the room. What is pacing? He was waiting for the president. Pacing? I mean, it was not walking, it was pacing. The wind slapped her cheek. Have you ever found the wind slapping? Usually the mother slaps the child, right? For mischievous behavior. But here the wind is slapping the cheek as she ran through the empty park. So see the kind of language, the figurative language being used to describe it. So instead of general, vague descriptions, vague means unclear, must use sensory details. Help the reader to visualize the person or place or thing you're describing. So it must appeal to the senses. Be as specific as possible within the moment. I mean, you don't have the whole life to tell the story. The whole, you can't keep writing without letting the reader get hooked, without coming to the plot, without coming to the theme. So you have to be specific. You can't keep on, blowing your horns, or you must be specific. And a repetition only should be done for making the point emphatic. If you're trying to emphasize, use repetition, but don't use the same adjectives or verbs again and again. Avoid monotonous, cliche or kind of, phrases that have been used over the years or many times, number of times. That's why we have so many synonyms. Believe me, English is one of the richest languages. In fact, English is notorious for borrowing the words from all over the place, all over the languages. I mean, you find Spanish, Arabic, English, Persian, all kinds of words from other languages have been incorporated in English. That's why English offers you a lot of opportunities, plenty of choices, alternatives to use. But you have to be rich. You have to enrich your vocabulary, And so any dictionary, I mean the physical one, not the digital one, you keep it as handy all the time, and it really helps you in coming up with the ideas of using the right words and vocabs. Now the best thing about using a physical dictionary is what? Can you tell me? Actually, I'm not chatting with you. The problem is I'm focusing on these, otherwise I would have explained you that once have a chance to check the dictionary, you don't get the meaning of that word alone. You come across associated meanings. You come across synonyms, antonyms, usages, the sentences being used. So believe me, the best friend, anything that you can always rely upon, always depend upon is the dictionary. The best friend, the most reliable friend in your life. Your teacher may be wrong. Your friends may be wrong. Google may be wrong. Sometimes even Google may not be perfect in the explanation it offers. But your dictionary will never tell lies, never mislead you. So enrich your vocabulary, not the passive one, but the active one. And try to use a sensory language that you can acquire over the years. It will come slowly. It won't come, quickly. The rain poured, the rain drenched. So instead of using, poured, see, we have used, first poured, then drenched, then destroyed. See the three powerful, action verbs being used here. Poured, drenched, destroyed. Instead of speeding past a moment, emphasize. Try to emphasize the details of it and expand upon a specific action. Instead of discussing the first day of school, you must, focus on the action the very first day. Action speaks louder than the words, right? Action speaks louder than the words. You keep saying things. If I keep giving you presentation every day on how to write, that won't help you unless you get into practice and you start doing it yourself, right? So we need to really expand, emphasize, and then a specific action to be discussed. Instead of discussing the first day of school, focus on the action, the very first word of it. So action is important than the lip service or just talking about it. The one good thing that strikes an immediate chord with the reader is humor. Humor is something kind of medicinal effect. It cuts across the boundaries of age, of culture, of laughter is powerful, really powerful. It's so subtle that even the two strangers become friends in a minute, and if they get to understand their humor. And a joke, if you crack, or it immediately lowers your hesitation, and you become friendly. But the humor should be subtle. It shouldn't be wide laughter or chuckling and nonsensical things. We must have a good it should have ludicrous effect upon the reader for the sake of creating a good atmosphere, not for the sake of buffoonery. Joking for the sake of joking. So I've already explained you about the figurative language that we use. So most powerful figure of speech we use in a daily writing or a narrative or descriptive writing could be similes and metaphors. It comes very easy. While using similes, we use as or like to compare two things. And even in everyday life, I mean, we keep comparing things when we're using, like, my brother is like, my brother is like, my father is like, my teacher is like, Jeddah is not like Riyadh, you know, and Riyadh is not as good as, or Jeddah is not as good as, or city is not as good as quite as, you know, or so we keep comparing even daily life. Metaphors, yet you have to think of two altogether different things as if they're the one. So we have to think of the metaphors. As I give an example of metaphor, like Jeddah is can we compare Jeddah to Tokyo? No, Jeddah cannot be Tokyo because it's not so crowded like Tokyo. It's not densely populated. We can say Jeddah is one of the cities like Tokyo. So sensory, imagery, vivid verbs. When you talk about verbs, we must give, you know, powerful action and moving verbs. Moving, I mean, it should move. For example, in the previous slide, I have shown you how the verbs can, you can see the verbs like this: drenched, poured, destroyed. Even we go back and we see the verbs being used here, like, you know, wind slapped her cheek. Now, this is not in the ordinary sense. The slap is not like slapping of a mother to child or a teacher or somebody to an out of anger. It's a kind of using the verb for the sake of intensity, for the sake of having a powerful impact upon the reader or the writer. So it's important to know and to learn how to convert your ordinary verbs by using lots of synonyms and antonyms and sensory verbs to create a powerful impact. Now, when it comes to writing style, we say there is a proverbial saying, the style is the man. I mean, the way you style, you are known or recognized in your society, in your circle. So every writer has a distinct style. Every author, every individual has his own unique style of writing. That's why when two people write, they never write alike. In fact, there's no specific template of writing. Every individual uses his own imagination, his own sensory perception, his own style of choice of diction, his choice of the words, the sentences, the mechanics, the structural form of, and the dialogues, the ideas, and all that. So if you want to be different, distinct, unique, you have to develop your own writing style by using figurative language, simile, metaphor, sensory, and sense structure. You can include some dialogues. Dialogues are a good way of being authentic and real in your approach. When you use a quotation marks and you say the statement of somebody, it lends credence to the actual, you know, statement, because you're not altering it, you're not changing it, you're exactly putting it as said by the speaker, and the point of view that makes each author unique. I mean, you have to have a unique distinction of being a stylized or a very, you know, a credited, a recognized author, and the world-class author. You know why the writer of this Harry Potter series, J.K. Rowling, she has attained so much in so little time. She is the highest paid author of today. I mean, of the present century. I mean, all her books have been filmed and have been, you know, presented in films, and So obviously something specific and special, and must be her writing style that makes her so distinct. You know, she's the only billionaire authors. Billionaire, I mean, she's a billionaire, very rich. Obviously, she writes the way nobody has ever written, or nobody knows how to write the way. So as a student also, you will have your own style, own techniques. Techniques may be sometimes similar to what others are using, because you have to have a good beginning, a thesis, and a hooking, hooker, and then the hook, and the joining, and the kind of transition words, paragraphs woven together, number of paragraphs, conclusion, the supporting details. These are almost, the techniques may be similar, somewhat similar, but the kind of treatment that you're giving, that will make your writing stand out. Although we have the same topic, everyone will write differently, right? Whenever I come across the scripts of my students, especially high levels, sometimes we are amazed, we're surprised by the quality, the kind of writing style that our students come up with. I have come across brilliant writers in level 4 sometimes, and believe me, I mean, I feel like as if I would love to write like that. So we shouldn't underestimate the capabilities of any writer. It could be any one of us. We still need to follow rules of writing. What are the basic rules of writing? Can you have the liberty of using a wrong spelling? No way. Because every good writer will be looked down upon if we make spelling mistakes, right? Can we have liberty with, just ignoring capitalization? No way. I mean, capitalization is an essential, integral, technical requirement to have flawless writing. Capitalize, and you know where proper names after the end of the period, and then some of the sobriquet or the abbreviations and those kind of things. Grammar also will go a long way in establishing your reputation as a good writer. We cannot afford, any writer cannot afford to commit this sinful act of grammar errors, in his writing, because you will be immediately discarded as someone whose linguistic competence or whose writer has flaws in it. So it's quite sinful. It's like committing a sin. So we must avoid using, if we are not sure about the grammatical rules, we can substitute our sentence with the simpler ones where we're sure of it. I mean, I would advise, I recommend all our students not to try out something really unfamiliar or some kind of grammatical structure is not confident of. He or she should always try out something that's proven, that he or she has handled before, and confident about the accuracy of the language. Punctuations. Punctuations are not just like commas and exclamatory signs and question mark. Actually, punctuations are like brakes. When we drive, we have brakes. We have clutches and brakes. Why? To adjust the speed, to be in control, full control of our movements. So punctuations are like speed breakers. Sometimes they are like bumps. They're like signals. They're like signposts. And they allow you to pause, to emphasize, to let the reader get to have the total view, the real view, the actual messages, underlying messages of the text. So if we have to practice it, if I'm just giving you some examples of how we begin and how. So we start with description. We can have starting with a question. It's one way of, exhorting your writer to read. We can start with an anecdote. I mean, a simple story. It can be a real one. It can be a fake or imagined or fictional one. You can also start with the quotation mark, like the direct speech, the quotes from somebody. You can, I mean, if you like, if you can handle it, you can start with a dialogue. It's okay, fine to start with dialogue, quotation, anecdote, question, description as a hook, to be followed by a thesis statement. Suppose this is one of the beginning, finish of the following sentence that created mini narrative. Now, what is mini narrative? I mean, it's not a long story. It's a short story. I fell asleep on the bus ride home when I woke up. Now, if I ask you to give me some of the endings of these, just try one. I'd like you to try one. Can you give me an ending of this? Akram. Akram. Can you give me an ending of first one? Good to see you here, Akram. And I'd like all of you to try this, attempting to give an ending. I fell asleep on the bus ride home when I woke up. Now, what could happen next? Can you give me an ending? When I woke up, to my utter surprise, could be surprise, could be dismay, could be horror, could be depending upon how you felt. So you are going to Medina, and you probably fell asleep on a bus ride home. When I woke up, I found myself in where? In Abur? In Abha, right? You were going to Medina. You found yourself in Abha. The second ending, I mean, this was just one way of, trying to continue with it. Even though the sky was dark and cloudy, I decided to. Now I decided to what? Even though it's a kind of contrast, It says that you did something you didn't want to, like even though, right? So you can say, I decided to, even though the sky is dark and cloudy, I decided to play my football match, right? Can be this, could be any ending, It could be any ending like this. I knew I would probably be grounded, so I knew I would probably grounded, so I grounded. Grounded here means that grounded is like punished. Yes, Ibrahim, you're right. Grounded is like punished, yes. I mean, not allowed to act, right? So even I knew I would be grounded. So I what? I had a plan B. So I had a plan B, right? Can be plan C. So something like that, When I woke up, I saw everything with gray and dismal. I was dreaming or what? Yes, it's a brilliant way of expressing your, visualizing what could have happened. Was it dreaming or I had been transported to another planet? Wow, that's really wonderful. It's quite imaginative, and this is how we're using the five senses. Yes. So I knew I had probably grounded. So if you are given such kind of this is like situations, this could be plausible or implausible situations. I mean, like, could be imaginary, could be real, could be, like these situations. You have to jerk your head. You have to, shake your head. You have to stir your inner instincts and come up with the brilliant ideas to come up with extrapolatory ideas, extrapolatory ideas, situations, right? So it takes a lot of imaginative faculty to come up with. Now let's go to some of the quick tips. It might help you. It's not a quick fix, or there's no ready way to come up. But these are some of the things you should take care while write one expression with the conflicts. Use WH questions. Always go by what happened, plot. Plot. It's a structure, the backdrop. Setting will be specific. Is it a village or a city or your home or any larger? Plot is progression and details. And as I have said, it's a good idea to use some dialogues, because dialogues make it more plausible, acceptable, and it's believable. People are likely to trust you if you use some of the authentic settings. Things to think about what you're writing. So when you start writing, there could be a situation where stories can make you laugh and can make you cry. But in both the cases, laughing and crying, there are emotional involvements. Like you have to have a connection with your emotional instincts. The essential elements are to have 3 key events. Now, without events, the story cannot be interesting. It cannot be really, it cannot get going, for long. So select good narrative details that add to the story. So details make your story longer and sustainable, and it stays in the minds of the reader, writer. Dialogues helps you to make it more authentic. And when you establish a point of view, you must impress upon your writer about who is telling story. Is it you? Is the author's persona? Sometimes the author gives a mask, a hat. We call it, writer's hat, a persona. I'm giving a personality to someone, a character in the story. So, and through that character, the writer tries to convey his messages. Some of the ideas to write a time when you were a child and learned a lesson in life. Can anyone show me something as beginning of this? Just a beginning of this. A time when you were a child and learned a lesson. Can anyone give me a beginning? Think of a beginning. Think of what lesson you could have learned. Can you come up with any idea? Anyone here? When I was at 7, I tried to touch a cup of tea. Okay. Okay. And then it was really hot, yeah? And then you spilled the hot tea spilled all over me, right? All over me, right? Could be something like this, right? Great, Abdurrahman, great. When I was 7, I tried to touch a cup of tea and then hot tea spilled over it. Yeah, good. Now, give me another scenario where a time when you made a big mistake and how it worked out. Can you think of a situation where you make a big mistake and how you improved upon your mistake? So a time when life was tough and yet in times you got over it. Number three can be like, it could be something like this, yeah? A time when life was tough. Let's think of this COVID. Think of a time this COVID is gone. This COVID is gone or no more, okay? And then think of how you stayed motivated. Yeah, you can think of this like, yeah, how you stayed motivated and active by praying, reading Quran, right? Right, guys? So there could be something like this. Yes, there is a reason why I'm afraid of dogs. When I was little, I was chased by a dog and the experience really scared me. Yeah, that's true. I mean, it stays in our subconscious memory and we tend to get back to that scary moment every time we think of that. That's correct. It's a very good, it's a brilliant and glaring example of how we can visualize or think of so now what are leads? If you think of the leads in your introduction, you can start with leads such as dialogue, feelings, experience, backflashes going back. Anecdotes are stories and questions or statements, right? Right. Okay. So these could be the leads, the starting point of our writing. Usually our paragraphs called body. This is a recap. I'm trying to recap and remind you of how we structure our writing. The body, the story. I mean, each paragraph is building the story to a climax. The climax should be starting in paragraph 3, but really comes to fruition in paragraph 4. The climax is the highest and the most exciting point of the story. So climax lets you think of it's like resolution. I mean, towards the end of the resolution you have. Now it's time to practice some of the figurative language. Can you compare this surface of the moon is like crumpled sandpaper? You see do you like this comparison? Can you give me another comparison of this? as clear as this. Can you compare this? Can you think of a comparison? Anybody with a comparative? Simile, like, you know, what else can we compare this to? The surface of the moon is like crumpled sandpaper. What is the other comparison you can think of? As bright as, she's as tall as a brother. Okay. Okay, good. Change and confined to our roost during COVID-19. Yes, Mohammed, great comparison. Confinement to our roost. Okay, so the surface of the moon might look like what? What else can we think of? Crumpled sandpaper. It might, you know, appear to be like what? It could be a desert, sandy desert of Rabiul Khali or Jeddah, right? I felt as nervous as a fish out of water. Now, when you're nervous, how is your recurrent feelings? In nervousness, you shake like a falling leaf from the tree, right? You're as nervous as the falling leaf from the tree. Have you seen the falling leaf from the tree when it's turned brown in the autumn? And you shake like, you know, so it's like as nervous as a fish, as clear as crystal. Crystal is like glass, you know, it's as clear as crystal. Good. Okay, look at this comparison. I want you to show this comparison. In a large box out in the garage, I want you to spend a minute to read this. And then think of the way this piece shows or gives you an idea, a picture of, in a large box out in the garage, surrounded by boots, shovels, and old paint stains, is a scene of joy. The happy mother lies in a tatty red and yellow blanket, and then how can you complete this? She licks the what? She licks the, maybe she licks the face, looks up with watchful own eyes when we bend over to see the tiny puppies, blind and almost hairless, scramble over one another, searching for their mother. So this is a frantic search of a puppy for the mother. And see the kind of verbs, the adjectives, the momentum that's created, and how the description gives brilliance to the. Okay, it's time now for comparing words. My tears were river. Is it a simile or a metaphor? Anyone out there, can you tell me? Is it a simile or a metaphor? Anyone who can, okay, great. It's a metaphor. Why? Because it's a direct comparison. It says, my tears were a river. I died with embarrassment. Her heart was on fire. I mean, we cannot fry our heart, but it seems as if it's a frying pan, you know. The heart is a frying pan. Good, Akram, metaphor. Yeah. He hit the wall of exhaustion. So if I ask you to come up with your own metaphor for this, my tears were a river. What is the other metaphor you can think of? Can you think of this tear as what? As what? Can you quickly think of something else instead of this tear flowing? Ocean. Yeah, great. It's like an ocean. Suppose I compare it to Jeddah fountain. Nafura, Jeddah. Will it be okay? It can be ocean, it can be river, it can be a waterfall, right? Maybe not. Okay, because Jeddah fountain is going up, right? It's not coming down, yeah? So waterfall comes down. Actually, I'm not talking about Jeddah fountain per se, but yes, waterfall, you know, it can be, I mean, denotative. I mean, it might denote the waterfall, shedding the tear. Okay, great. So look, this is the way we use the metaphors to describe two dissimilar things being one, as if they're one. Okay, now it comes to another way of, now see the kind of adjectives we're using here. The tall, thin man entered the spooky room with measured steps. Inside the room, deep shadows crouched in wait for him. Now, crouched is like crouching tiger, crouching animals, you know. So what is waiting in the crouch? Crouching is like, it instills fear, it instills mystery, instills, even the choice of the words, like spooky room, I mean, like ghostly. And the man is described as tall, thin man. I mean, he's not an ordinary, usual looking man. It's like too tall, thin, enter. The room is also ghostly, spooky, and his steps are not usual steps, measured. So inside the room, deep shadow, crouch and wait for him. That means something really bad is lying in store for him, right? Okay. Can you come up with some kind of comparatives or metaphors or here? For example, okay, maybe a volcano in heat or pain. Okay, maybe a volcano in the room. Volcano in the room. It's a room. Inside the room. It's a room. So there should be measured steps spice. Okay, for the previous example. All right, measured step is a spice. Yes, measured steps like very cautious, and it's like cautious, full of anticipation, right? Yes. So, okay. So this is how we really try to create a scene. Once again, look at this. The words we describe are modified verb. Just dive steeply, rapidly, gracefully. These adverbs describe the fireworks, yeah? Another brilliant way of showing it. So in order to recap, we have descriptive essays following the base structure. Essay format could be like 5 paragraphs. Usually we use present tense description. Yeah, we prefer to use third person. And don't forget, remember that descriptive essays always use an observation, like using 5 senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. This is, this guy, do you know this guy? Is Dr. Samuel Jensen. You know, when he came up with the first dictionary, I'm going to compile dictionary, how many words he had? 42,773 words only. how many words this guy, I mean, the most, versatile and prolific writer of English language, Shakespeare, how much words he has added? Do you know how many? Just 1,700 new words. And do you have any idea? This COVID, this has added hundreds of words to our dictionary. What I'm trying to tell you that the English is ever encompassing. It's ever getting richer every day with new words coming up. Like social distancing, it wasn't any word earlier. Now this is, I mean, there's this COVID situation has given us a new word in social distancing. Then we have epidemiology. We have so many new words coming up, and that's gaining, place in the newer corpus. Now our corpus, it runs into millions of new words nowadays. So while thinking of writing, we must have enriched vocabulary. We must have a full gamut of, full store of. Thank you guys. I think I've been able to deliberate or highlight some of the key points, some of the tips. They could be called tips or some suggestions or a mild, recommendations to you to become a good writer. Not in your exams alone. I'm not talking about the exam. I'm talking about you being a successful writer, an accomplished writer, a creditor writer in your future. It's a lifelong process. It doesn't come easy. It takes a lot of time to hone the skill of writing, to improve upon your basic, writing competence. First draft, second draft, third draft, like this, and then comes the final draft. So it's a painstaking process. Believe me, even today, if I have to write something, I will write a first draft. Then I'll tear it off. I'll go to the second draft, unless and until I'm convinced that it's going to have a good impact upon the reader. I will not rest until I have done the fine job of the writing. So writing is the most complex process, and it's like conceiving of a new idea, then giving birth to it, and then making it an adult. Thank you so much. I'm waiting for you guys to come up with any questions. If I could be of any help to you in clearing your doubts. Actually, I'm not a counselor or a doctor of, I'm simply trying to help you with some of the key points that need to be considered while writing.
All right, so thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, for this very detailed workshop about how to write narrative and descriptive essays. Thank you all for attending this workshop. I just shared with you 2 links. The first one is the evaluation form. Please complete it. And the second one is our YouTube channel. So this is the last workshop in our series. So next week, inshallah, we'll start a new series, which is about technical writing. So we will have a workshop about how to write a report or different types of reports. So I think almost we passed time. So I think there will be no time for questions. So thank you all. Thank you again. Please don't forget to complete the form. Thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for this wonderful presentation.
You're welcome, sir. You're welcome, sir.
And enjoy the rest of your night. I'll see you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all. That'll be all for today.